a terrific thing to actually realise a big dream like that.
Welcome to the Members Lounge Pod, a place where we talk to everyday people about their life story and also what got them into golf. Today, I'm joined by someone truly special, a pioneer of women's sport, an elite international athlete, and a lifelong volunteer. Welcome, Helen Brown.
Oh, thank you, Gemma.
Look, let's start right at the beginning. Before elite sports and international tours, you grew up 2 hours from Melbourne in Bendigo. Tell me about your family and what it was like growing up as a child there.
Well, we lived in Eagle Hawke, which is sort of the wrong side of town in Bendigo, and my father had grown up there. His family had come out during the gold rush, and in fact his father worked in the gold mines for most of his working life. So we went back there after Dad had worked in Melbourne and lived there all of the time I was growing up. And we had two of Dad's uncles lived with us, and from our point of view it was a good deal because we kids had someone to play with us, and so we played a lot of sport at home and we got a lot of encouragement.
So you're clearly ambitious from a young age, and you did a straight science course at Bendigo High School. So all of the school teachers listening will be mortified to know that you're in a class size of 40 students. But in that class you were one of only two girls or two females. So what was that experience like?
Well, it was actually very difficult because it was in the era when you could repeat your final year at school, used to be matric, without any penalty. And so, as well as having, I was at the start of the baby boom, so we'd always had big classes, but as well as having the people who are in the current class that I was going through with, we had a whole group of boys who'd been away at private schools, hadn't done well enough to get into medicine or engineering, and they came back and landed in our class as well. And they knew exactly what they wanted from the teachers. They just dominated the class for the whole year. So I did really struggle that year more than I hadn't ever struggled at school before, but it's just the way it was.
And so that path must have been pretty uncommon for females if you were one of only two students in that class. What gave you that confidence to still pursue that?
Well, I'd always done well at maths at school, and I'd just decided I wanted to be a scientist. And my dad had always said we could do anything we wanted. I think he was a bit shocked when we actually started doing it, but nevertheless we were encouraged to keep going to school and to do as well as we could.
So do you think your dad or your parents instilled those sorts of values in you?
Yeah, Dad in particular was very keen on us getting a really good education, but Mum had the brains. She could have done anything, but she'd grown up again in a fairly ordinary family and had only had secretarial and bookkeeping training. So she probably was a little bit frustrated with her lifestyle, and I could see that in her, and I thought, well, maybe if I do something I really want to do, it'll work out better.
And so after high school, you moved to Melbourne to work at the Royal Children's Hospital and you studied nights at RMIT. What kept you going through those long days and nights?
Well, I didn't want to wake up one day and find out that I was back in Eagle Hawke and working in a factory, which was sort of, in my mind, the alternative. And once I was working at the Children's, they were just wonderful people that I worked with. The actual people I went to night school with, the people running the labs as well, they were very, terrific people, very encouraging. And so working and studying was just what everybody else was doing. And at the Children's, you weren't expected to just complete the course, you were expected to actually excel. So I sort of just jumped on the bandwagon.
And so it was back at Bendigo High School before you moved to Melbourne that your passion for hockey came to life, and you played a lot of hockey in Bendigo High School. And when you were in Melbourne, you had two big dreams. One was to finish a degree and the other was to make the Victorian state hockey team. Did you think both of those things were possible at that point in time?
Yes, I was absolutely determined to make the state team when I came to Melbourne. I just missed out on the junior state team, and I felt that I had the right sort of skills for hockey, that the game suited me. I could run all day, I had good reflexes, and it was just an incredibly fantastic game to play. Golf is a real disappointment, to be honest.
And so you moved to Melbourne and you started playing for Ivanhoe A grade. What was it like playing at that level?
Oh, it was fantastic. Our coach was an ex-Australian player. She'd started the club in Ivanhoe, and it had only been going about 7 or 8 years at that time. And as it turned out, my boss at the Children's Hospital was the captain in our team. So I remember the first day I turned up to practice, they put me as centre forward. I did it was a bully start then, and then just shot down through the field and scored a goal. And they all looked at each other and said, "Oh, you'll do us, Helen." And I really felt at home from the first day I was there.
And so you were selected for the Victorian team. How long did that take and what did that feel like?
Oh, well, I went to state trials the next year, and I got down into the last group. And so the year I was selected, I was fairly sure I was going to get in. It was quite a buzz, although I was selected as a reserve. But as it turned out, one of the players was ill when we got up to Brisbane. I got a chance to play, and I played virtually every game for the next 10 years. So it was, it is a terrific thing to actually realise a big dream like that. But playing for Australia just was an incredible bonus on top of that.
Yeah, so that's right. So you were then selected for the Australian team in 1969. How did that come about? Did you get a call? Did they tap you on the shoulder? How did you know you were selected for that team?
Well, in those days, we had an interstate tournament every year, and that year it was in Adelaide. I think our games were played on the Adelaide Oval, the same place they play the cricket now, and we had the All-Australian dinner after that. So on that night, they announced the All-Australian team, and then if there were any teams going away, they announced that team as well. So it was announced at a dinner, a fairly posh dinner, and all of a sudden there were two of us from Victoria, Jenny McLaughlin, who was just a wonderful player, and myself, and we were the only two Victorians who were selected. So it was very exciting.
How did your family take that?
Oh, they were thrilled, but they were surprised, I guess. And the family overall, my dad's brothers are very supportive. They all, people used to send me checks for, $50 to help pay for because we had to pay our own fares, and also have leave from work without pay was the standard thing for sport for women in those days.
That tour in 1969, that took you through England, Europe and South Africa. But you didn't actually meet your team, the Australian team, before you left. You met them on the plane, is that right?
Yeah, that's true. Jenny and I had to train through the summer on our own, and then we had our flights and we flew over to South Australia, and there were a few South Australians there, and then over to Western Australia, picked up a few more people, and then others had flown in from Queensland and New South Wales. So I guess we all knew who those players were, but as a team, we didn't have any training before we left. We were given instructions on how to get ourselves fit enough, and then we had a flight to about a 28-hour flight to England. on Air India before we actually started to train together.
What's the prep of a 28-hour flight like before you get back on the hockey field? Is that a bit tough?
It was shocking for me. I had jet lag for nearly a week, and we were staying at Crystal Palace, the National Sports Centre, and it was freezing as well. And it was in February 1970 by then, so it was absolutely, it was very hard to get going.
And so did you guys come together as a team pretty quickly? What was that, building that team like?
Well, I think we had it was a very good team. We had a star centre forward from Queensland, Annette West, and she was just a natural goal scorer. We had a very good goalie. We had a very good fullbacks and a good half line. And so the forward line was the trickiest thing to get to gel together. But with Annette as the sort of star forward, we were able to build all our tactics around sort of feeding the ball to her. And so we started scoring a lot of goals, and that made us a very successful team.
So what was that experience like, travelling through, England, Europe and South Africa together as a team?
Well, in England, they hired a bus for us. We had our own bus and our own bus driver, and he used to drive us from one city to the next, and then and mostly we were billeted with people. The only time we went into a hotel was in London when we went to play a test match against England. And but the rest of the time, people looked after us. They were mostly hockey players or friends of hockey players' families, and mostly those experiences were very positive. So every time we got back together, everyone's saying, we were very relieved to be back in the team, and the team, we gelled very quickly, and as soon as successful teams find it easy to get on and not feel too upset about anything that little things go wrong all the time, but there wasn't much distress on that whole trip really.
Yeah, lovely. And so you played 32 matches on that tour. How physically and mentally demanding was that?
Well, it is quite demanding, but then if you're playing a game that you really want to play, and like we did have reserves, we had 3 reserves, and the reserves didn't play a lot of the games, so I was always eternally grateful that I wasn't a reserve and that I was getting a regular game in all the top games. When you really like playing a game, the more the merrier, really.
And so what was it like being a woman representing Australia at that time?
The amount of publicity we got was next to none. Very little recognition for the quality of athletes that we were. I think Jenny McLaughlin in particular was probably one of the best athletes ever in Australia, and she's had very little recognition. Hockey Australia in the last few years has come to terms with the neglect of the women's side of the game, especially us older players who were playing before women's hockey went into the Olympics. Women's hockey only went in, I think, for the Atlanta Olympics, and before then the men were playing but we weren't, and so that meant that we didn't get the recognition of being Olympians. But Hockey Australia has recognised us past players as being Hockeyroo's, as they're all called now, and so we've been invited to matches and to receptions and things. So they have made a very significant effort to sort of redress those issues of the past.
And so what does, looking back on your Australian hockey career, what does that mean to you now, looking back on it?
Well, I mean, I'm eternally grateful for it because it changed my life. And, I mean, you can look at these things 2 ways, and I see no point in being bitter and twisted about the inequalities of women's sport back then. You know, you didn't have to go very far or look very far to hear people saying women's sport was a joke. Remember the hassle that women tennis players had to get equality, and it's gradually moved in through other parts of sport. But so the 70s and 80s, up to then, women's sport was a joke, and people weren't really considered to be athletes.
Yeah, right. That must have been quite tough now that you look back on that.
Well, yes. I mean, I was very aware of the unfairness of it. I guess I used to say to people I'd have got more recognition if I'd played 2 games in the St Kilda Seconds and been a male. And I'm sure I would have.
So coming back to your Victorian state hockey team, there was a really defining moment that you played a role in 1971. You scored the only goal in the finals for Victoria to win its first national championship in 40 years. What was that moment like?
It's very hard to go back to that. I think, like, we had tried so hard over so many years, and to actually get that ball in the net and then be able to keep Western Australia out, because they were the powerhouse of women's hockey. But luckily the tournament was in Melbourne and we were playing on a soggy field, so it didn't suit them. And it was incredible.
Very important moment by the sounds of it.
My parents actually came down from Bendigo to watch that game. They'd hardly ever seen me play, so it was quite important.
So eventually elite hockey ended, but your life didn't slow down. You moved to London in 1977. What sparked that move?
Well, I needed to upgrade my qualifications, and I felt I needed a clean break to when I stopped playing hockey. So my last year in the stateside was 76, and so I sort of announced my retirement in 77 and then decided to go to England.
And so how did that period shape your life?
Oh, well, I really enjoyed working in England, and especially the job at Guy's. I was working with very good people. I was playing hockey over there. I played for Middlesex County for a season, and that was another interesting insight into how disorganised English sport was. Women's hockey wasn't even played in leagues. You know how if you join a team here and you start, you have D grade, B grade, C grade, A grade. They weren't playing in leagues, they played what they called friendlies.
And so then you moved back to Australia. So why that move back home?
My dad wasn't well. He had bowel cancer. So I really felt I should come back. They offered me a place to do a PhD, but I chose to come back, and also wages were very poor at that time. I could earn a lot more money in Australia.
And so you lectured at RMIT at that time, and you worked in forensic medicine and also state veterinary labs. What part of your career are you most proudest of when you look back at everything?
Probably teaching at RMIT was the most important part of my working life, because I think there were a couple of really nice women on the staff there, and I think most of the people who did the medical science course were women, and I think it was really important for them to have female role models who were able to share our experiences in the workforce but provide a bit of leadership as well.
So, outside of your work career, you've also done an extraordinary amount of volunteer work. You've worked on countless committees, you've coached, you've taught, you've helped migrants learn English, you've restored natural spaces. Where does that drive to serve come from?
Oh, I think my parents always were on committees. If they were interested in something, they'd do something about it. And because I didn't marry, I didn't have the extra responsibilities of having to, run a household or run around after children. So I've always had a fair bit of energy, and for the things I'm interested in, I'm fairly organised.
So, from all those volunteer roles, what's the one thing you've done that's been the most impactful for you?
Well, I've been really pleased to be able to be working on environmental projects for the last 15 years of my life. I was always interested in that. We spent a lot of time in the whipstick forest outside Eagle Hawk when we were younger, and so I'm absolutely horrified to see the issues that we have with weeds in Melbourne. Virtually every roadside is contaminated by weeds. I'm in a position to do something about it at the club and over at the Burke Road Billabong, where I've been working for a long time as well. And you meet fantastic people who are involved in these sorts of projects, and I really enjoy doing it.
Yeah, so 13 years ago you started the Riverbankers project at Latrobe Golf Club. Just tell us a little bit about what that project is and what you've achieved through that time.
Well, I got the idea when we were actually having to modify the club to allow Melbourne Water to put the new main sewer down through the club, through the 8th hole basically, and out through the paddock over the other side. And they brought up some information that said that there were grants available to help anyone who had a river frontage, and the club has over 2.5 kilometres of river frontage. So I thought, well, we would qualify. So I was on the board at the time, so I put it to the board that it would be a good thing to do. Oh, well, we'll have a go, Helen, they said, a little bit doubtful that anything would come of it. So they obviously didn't know me very well. And so I put in for a grant and started the group at the same time. I'm fairly sure we'd get one.
And why is it important to remove weeds from the environment?
Well, there's a lot of work going on to try and restore our habitat for all sorts of animals and insects, and the birds particularly can't live without like the ground feeders, access to the ground. If the weeds are there, they just can't get there. And there are a lot of very good revegetation projects being done further between us and the city. And if our area is totally contaminated with weeds, then that's all being washed downstream and contaminating other sites as well. So it's Melbourne Water has programs where they work on weed eradication, but it's a tough business because the weeds are out of control really all over Melbourne.
Seeing 20,000 square metres of land restored, that's, you came up with this idea to go for that grant, you put it forward, you created the group, you've pushed it forward for 13 years. What does it feel like to kind of see that over that period?
I try not to feel too tired. No, I'm eternally grateful for the people who've helped me. We've got a nice bunch of people helping us now, so you make different friends. Every time you do something, you make friends. So it's quite rewarding. And our assessor from Melbourne Water, he's always, very pleased and very grateful for the amount of work that we've done at the club.
If you're a Latrobe Golf Club member and you want to help out on the Riverbankers project, contact the club and they'll put you in touch with Helen. And if you are not a Latrobe Golf Club member and you do still want to help out, you can contact
the Burundara Council, and it's the Burke Road Billabong Reserve, which runs from the back of Kew Golf Club round to the Burke Road Bridge.
On that volunteer work, you also did a lot of things around helping migrants learn English and a few other things in that space. How did you get involved in that?
Just because I'd lived in England and I'd seen how difficult it was to just even speaking the language or something close to it, they thought, it's just not easy to fit into another country, and I just felt that it would be a useful thing to do. So I used to go and help out at migrant English classes, and then I was also helping at the Somali Homework Club.
So somewhere along the way, golf enters your life. When did you first start playing golf?
It started about 1985 or so. I hadn't played anything much while I first worked at RMIT because I was just too busy, and then I found that I had time to do it, and some of my friends from RMIT started playing, so we used to go and play up at Wood End, and then they went to live interstate, so I thought, I played a couple of games at the weekend at Yarra Bend and thought that I can't do this. I've got to keep moving with the game if I'm going to play, so I applied to join Latrobe.
Do you think your hand-eye coordination from hockey gave you a bit of a head start in golf?
Oh, it certainly did. I was surprised really when I started because I could always hit the ball a long way. I used to hit. They were the good old days, 200 metres, and so yeah, people were actually used to look at me and say, "You sure you've just started?"
So you joined Latrobe in 1987. Your handicap dropped quite quickly. Did that competitive instinct come back immediately?
Yes, yeah. I just joined thinking, oh, well, I might make a few friends in the local area, but all of a sudden I could see that, it wouldn't be that difficult to get into the Pennant team, and so all of a sudden I was trying to fit in golf and work, which was actually quite difficult, especially in those days.
And tell me about that challenge, because you played Pennant for 25 years, so there must have been a really strong connection to do that and to do that year after year. But that balancing of work, how did you manage that?
Well, I had to take my holidays mostly. I got a few rostered days off and things like that, but I used a lot of my holidays to play in that and to play in the club championship. Yeah.
Do you have a favourite Pennant memory?
Oh, yeah, probably the year I was captain and we won 2 flags in the 1 year. We were expecting to win one, I think in section 7 or 8, section 8 probably, and then we also won in the in section 4. I think someone had to lose and we had to win, and all those things fell into place. And I'll never forget Murray properly coming up to tell me that we'd actually won in our second flag in that same week.
So you had a great experience doing Pennant. You won those 2 flags. You also won club championships twice and multiple foursome titles. What achievement means the most to you?
Probably the first club championship, because I wasn't expected to win. I was playing Heather Heath, and Heather had been here for longer than me, and I was working. A lot of people didn't know me, so they sort of felt I'd come out of nowhere, but I'd sort of set myself to win before I got too old, and so yeah, it was tough, but I Yeah, I was able to win. I won fairly easily, as it turned. I won on the 13th hole of this second 18. So, yeah, like 6 and 5, I think it was. And I can remember putting that last putt in, and I knew I was going to win it. But anyway, it's getting to be a while ago.
So you didn't just play golf, you also played a really big role in changing the game, in particular for working women. So you became the women's captain and later a women's district delegate and then a women's Golf Victoria match committee member. Why was leadership in those roles important to you at that time?
Well, it was the only way to get a voice on the committees that controlled how golf was played at state level. So as soon as I could get myself onto the match committee, and not many people from the Latrobe women have been very active at state level, so I had to ask a few times, and like there's no election, you sort of have to be tapped on the shoulder, so it's very much easier to be tapped on the shoulder if you're down on the sandbelt. So anyway, I managed to get onto those committees and found that there was quite a very active group of women who wanted to see golf move to be played at the weekends, that it was unfair that people had to take time off work, or schoolgirls. That was what really worried me. Schoolgirls were having to take time off work to play pennant when they were 16, 17, 18. And so most of them either stopped playing or they finished up in sort of bits and pieces job, thinking that they were perhaps going to be good enough to be pros. And if they didn't make it, then their education had suffered at any rate. So really it's not a choice boys were making, and the unfairness of it was just too much for me.
Yeah, so I guess you helped push through the change for Metropolitan Pennant where, do you want to explain it? So that women were being played, like the games were on weekdays?
For 102 years, Metropolitan Pennant had been played midweek, and it goes right back to the days where women weren't allowed to be members of golf clubs at the weekend. For many years you couldn't be a Saturday member, but for longer than that, women were not expected to play at the weekends. So, Sunday golf had been in for quite a while, and then Saturdays it only happened after the equal opportunity legislation in the 80s that women could actually play on Saturdays. And golf is a pretty conservative sport, so they weren't exactly rushing to let women play golf at the weekends. And it suited most of the people who were on the committees that were running golf, so they weren't pushing for change. The only people pushing for change were young women who'd, put hours and hours of their lives into becoming good enough to play pennant, and then found that, as soon as they got a job like teaching or nursing, that they couldn't get the time off to play. They actually had to give up those careers, do something different, or not play golf, not play pennant golf. And like pennant's the pinnacle of golf. Metropolitan golf is probably in Melbourne, it's one of the highest standards of golf you can play. So there's almost no point playing if you can't play pennant for people who are competitive.
So the format was originally that there were 2 weekdays where the Metropolitan Pennant was played, and you requested that they move one of those days to a Sunday. But the match committee rejected that suggestion initially. And Helen, you're not a person that takes no for an answer, so what did you do about it?
Well, I'd been talking to Kay Maluk about it. We'd actually both stood for the Women's Golf Victoria board and hadn't got on, but we were only really with the view of trying to get this change through. So we had like a backup plan to circulate the proposal to as many clubs and captains as we could find during the start of the Pennant season. And that started a groundswell of when people could see it on paper how it would work and that it seemed quite a fair way to do it, they started saying, well, why aren't we doing this? And that sort of was the start of having the change go through.
So the change went through the very next season after that?
Yes, it did, yeah.
So what did it feel like when that change finally went through?
Well, I actually said to my partner, Ronnie, I said, well, I can die happy now. It really was a big thing for me. Like, not many people start out with a 10-year plan to actually do it, but that's what I did. I actually set out to do that, 10 years before, and to actually get it done, it was pretty amazing. I thought it would be harder.
So the women who are currently playing Sunday Pennant can thank you and all of the women who backed you to push that through.
Yes, yeah, that's true. Kay Mallock, Helen Gallatley, there's some terrific people out there, but to actually get it done, it was a big success.
So Helen, you're the only female life member at Latrobe Golf Club.
Well, currently there have been two before me, but yeah, I'm the only current life member. But we don't have very many. There's a fairly strict criteria. What's
that recognition feel like?
It was very good of the club to make me a life member. I didn't particularly want to be a life member, to be honest, but I felt that it was important that we did have one woman at least who was an active life member, and I guess I fit the criteria.
You're a life member of Latrobe Golf Club. You've pushed through Metropolitan Pennant changes, so they sound like your big moments in golf, but most people's big moment in golf is a hole-in-one, and you've had one, so can you tell us about that?
Oh yes, I was playing in the Dallas Brooks foursomes at Metropolitan Golf Club. I was playing with David Baker and we were on the 13th hole. It's a par 3 of course, and he was waiting up near the green, and I hit the ball and he thought it was going to run from the bottom of the hole right up over the back, and he was going to have to chip back down the hill towards the hole and then it went in. So we just saw it, but I think he was very relieved.
And so you could see it from the tee box go in the hole?
Yes, yeah. We saw it sort of hit at the bottom of the green and started running a bit too fast, really, and then went clunk into the hole.
What did that moment feel like, Helen?
I was surprised, to be honest. I've been playing a long time and I'd never had one, so yes.
No holes in one at Latrobe though. Play here regularly. Haven't managed to sneak one in.
No, I haven't. They are a bit of a fluke. Yeah.
And so, look, when you look back at your life, you've had hockey, science, golf, volunteering. What are you most proud of?
Oh, just the amount that I've been able to get done, really. I guess playing hockey for Australia is a big thing, and now that we're getting a little bit more recognition, it feels a lot. I feel a lot better about it, and the environmental work. I really, that's the whole community benefits from that, and I'll keep doing it as long as I can.
Finally, my last question: what brings you the most joy in life?
Seeing young people do well, I think. You see so many kids around this club play fantastic golf so quickly, and my niece has got 2 little boys and I've been able to coach them along. Taught them all I know about sport, I'd say, but not really. But they're both doing very well in their early teenage years, so that's always a bit of a buzz too. And yeah, just to make sure that you make some friends and keep them.
Well, thank you, Helen. So thank you so much for sharing your story with us. Your life has been absolutely extraordinary. You've represented Australia. You've played in pivotal moments in Victorian hockey team. You've changed golf for women like me who are coming through, and the environmental and community work you do is unbelievable how much time you've given back. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, thank you, Emma. Thanks for asking.